Today I'm gonna tell you a breakup story that isn't a sad story at all. It's just a story. It's a human and humane, kind and graceful story. It's about the kind of breakup we should all be striving for. This is part 1. In one of my next episodes, I will refer back to today's breakup story as a blueprint for something else unrelated to this one that utterly confused me. For now, let's get into it. I leave you, and I leave you the best of me. I got this quote from some movie or TV show I don't remember. I googled it because it seemed like a really good quote at the time and didn't find a conclusive source, but I saw it attributed to both the Bible and Denzel Washington. The reason I'm thinking of this quote today is that it seems very appropriate for graceful breakups, the mature ending of things, moving on or quitting jobs. Cerrar la puerta con amor, as they say in Mexico. In my case, I no longer teach classes at FDSA. I want to share the story behind it. I very much appreciate Denise and the chance she took on me when she first let me teach at FDSA about a decade ago. I had been a student, I had dog sat for her, we had become friends, I had invited her to do a seminar in Austria, translated Beyond the Backyard to German, and then I got to teach at FDSA, and it was awesome. The first class I ever took at FDSA as a student was Sue Ailsby's shaping class, taught by Sue. It is still the best online class I've ever taken. Nothing else has come remotely close to Sue's feedback. After this class, I thought to myself, my dream job is teaching at FDSA. I want to be Sue when I grow up. Then, suddenly, I was almost 30 and I looked back and thought, wow, that's crazy. I already have my dream job. Don't people usually work decades to get to their dream job? Interestingly, it's not my dream job anymore. I kept learning, attending courses, seminars, conferences, in person, online, from all kinds of trainers and all over the place. My training evolved and changed, my philosophy and values evolved and changed. Fast forward a bunch of years, and I got to a point where I wanted to explore balanced training more in depth because I was fortunate to be exposed to some excellent balanced training and see the results it could produce. It made me realize that traditional training I had seen in the past and had equated with balanced training in my mind that had just been bad dog training. It wasn't the method, it was the implementation. And I've seen just as much fallout from poorly implemented so-called force-free training as well. The more I learned, the more I wanted to learn. That's who I am as a person, and the way it went with clicker training initially for me too. So I looked down the rabbit hole and explored a little bit to make sure whether this was the hole I wanted to go down. I realized, yeah, it really was. I shared with Denise that I wanted to go down that rabbit hole of punishment. I wanted to learn how to apply it well to get desired results that may for some students be more appropriate than going a quote-unquote force-free route in cases where the force-free route would require months or years to complete, while other methods might be able to reach the same goal in weeks or months. While still being absolutely fair and clear to the dog, of course. I was starting to strongly suspect that this was possible. I almost compulsively needed to learn more now because I always want to be the best and most effective dog trainer for my students that I can be. Even if 95% of what I do will stay the same, I want to give them all the options if there are more. Denise confirmed that she always encouraged people to explore. I didn't expect anything less from her. I wouldn't ask or expect to have to ask permission for something like that. I told her that I assumed I'd continue going down that route until I was good enough to not only know who to refer to, but also teach my own students. I wanted to know whether, once I reached that point, I could still teach at FDSA, within the parameters of FDSA, of course, while allowing my training outside of FDSA to change and evolve in other ways. I also wanted to share my own learning journey on my podcast, my blog, on YouTube, so I asked if that was okay for someone teaching at FDSA, or whether there was a point where Denise would have to fire me. Was there a line in the sand? And if so, where exactly was that line? I wanted to be informed myself and also be open with Denise, so she'd have time to find a replacement. It turns out that there is indeed a line. As long as I just explored by myself or attended seminars as an auditor only, it wouldn't be a problem. But if I publicly endorsed a balanced trainer or publicly shared that I was learning something that caused me to change my own philosophy, it would be a good time for me to walk away from FDSA. That's what I understood anyways from this conversation with Denise. Language is fraud and we misunderstand each other all the time. I don't want to put words in Denise's mouth, so that's what I heard, not a direct quote. Mea culpa if I misunderstood. So Denise explained where the line in the sand was. Metaphorically speaking, I could walk all the way up to it, consider things, and then make my decision. I appreciated knowing. I was planning on auditing a seminar by Chachak and Larry Crone, who I had only followed online so far, and I'd make my decision after. In the role as a fellow trainer and friend, I was also looking forward to sharing with Denise what I learned, and so was she. Denise thought it was possible that I would, after the in-person seminar, decide that sticking to FDSA's methodology was still the best for my students. I doubted it, but I was open and curious whichever way it would go. It went the way I expected. I was even more convinced after the seminar. I found that yes, absolutely. I want to learn how to teach humans to use methods other than positive reinforcement, negative punishment, and management well. And I want to share my own journey along the way and give everyone who helps me learn more a shout out because I love giving people credit. What was probably the main reason for me walking away with this conclusion was that all the people who came to that seminar walked away with both more effective and less intrusive ways of helping their dogs through problematic situations. So it's not that the people came there throwing cookies at their dogs and then left hanging their dogs on a prong collar. Most of the seminar was based on playing with your dog and building great relationships. And then there was a little bit of how to effectively tell your dog that something they are doing is not okay. So instead of jerking on a prong collar, there were less intrusive and more effective methods that people walked away with. And I think they and their dogs are better off for it. I shared this with Denise and told her about the people and presenters at the seminar and what it had been like. In my mind, I shared this with Denise, my friend and fellow training geek, not Denise, the owner of FDSA. I've always liked sharing dog training experiences with Denise, and probably always will. We agreed that, apart from the fact that it had been an interesting seminar, it meant it was time for me to walk away from FDSA. Denise understood my decision if I wanted to be on the other side of the line in the sand. She's always been understanding and graceful and wonderful to talk to. I took a few days to think about whether I wanted to keep my mouth shut about my new experiences and what I was learning until after the class and the workshop I had already scheduled on FDSA for 2025, or whether I wanted to start sharing right away and take my events off the FDSA schedule. It's not that Denise told me it was one or the other. It's just that the line in the sand, the FDSA company policy that Denise had pointed out in the earlier conversation, was very clear, and it was important to me to respect it. I'm sure I could have danced around that line, pretended not to know where exactly it was, or that I was crossing it by accident, and I would have gotten away with it, because it is the social norm to behave in these kinds of ways. Someone else might not have asked where the line is in the first place, and later use this as an excuse for having crossed it accidentally. People play games with each other and try to have their cake and eat it too. This is the kind of hypocrisy I abhor in any and all contexts of human interaction. It is also doing the dog training industry such a huge disfavor. So I left. The very reason I started a podcast is so I can talk about whatever I want. So I told Denise, hopefully with plenty of time to find a replacement for me, and I told Terry and Amy to take my courses off the schedule. So this is the breakup story between me and FDSA, the company, in a nutshell. With FDSA, Denise built something awesome that I highly respect. I don't need to be a part of it to respect it. The reason I've enjoyed teaching there very much over the last couple of years, and that I'd have loved to continue occasionally teaching there, just like I always had, are the students. Every single term, I feel like I must be the luckiest of all people teaching at FDSA, because my gold teams are the most amazing people and dogs. So I didn't want to leave. I would have loved to continue being an FDSA instructor in the same way I've always been, and continued sticking to FDSA philosophies on FDSA, while also changing and broadening my knowledge and my teaching off FDSA. But that doesn't work with the company policy, and that's okay. I don't make the policies. FDSA treats its independent contractors very well. It's always been a joy working there. Apart from Denise and Milo just being awesome, humane, conscientious people, there's of course the huge advantage that FDSA does the advertising for its courses. I am someone who capital H hates advertising myself, so this was wonderful. In the end, I didn't feel personally attached to the FDSA brand. That made leaving easy. I will take a financial hit because I will continue to hate advertising and probably rarely do so. I'm lucky in that 1, I am able to downsize my life, and 2, financial stability in the distant future isn't something I factor into my decisions. I don't expect there to be a distant future, and that makes it easy to leave when it's time. My relationship with Denise is still a personal one. It is separate from my relationship with FDSA. Of course, Denise has a relationship with FDSA because she is the owner of the company. That doesn't influence my relationship with either Denise or FDSA. I don't mind what relationships Denise has with other people and companies, and I wish her company to continue being a big success. I do care about the friendship Denise and I have. We don't see each other or talk all the time, but I'm sure that if I was in California, I get to visit, and if she makes it to Mexico while I'm here, we'll spend time together as well. I'm sure we'll continue geeking out about dog training or philosophize about humans every now and then online. The personal relationship is valuable to me. I don't expect it to be impacted by me having taught at FDSA and no longer teaching there. The point that I'm trying to make with my ramblings here isn't the dog training point. It's something I find super interesting. I feel like my breakup with FDSA is like this non-emotional parallel to human relationships. We can look at it objectively because it's not a romantic relationship. It's 3 entities, 2 of which are people and 1 of which is a company. From my perspective, before I broke up with FDSA, I had a relationship with FDSA because I was an independent contractor for them, and I had a relationship with Denise because we are friends. These relationships are unrelated. Ending one does not impact the other. Denise has a relationship with FDSA because she owns it, and Denise has a relationship with me because I'm her friend. Those are also unrelated. FDSA has a relationship with Denise because the company is being owned by her, and FDSA used to have a relationship with me because I was one of their independent contractors. From my point of view, it's like there are three distinct dots. You can draw lines between them to visualize the three different relationships. At each tip of the triangle, you could imagine one of the three entities, and each side of the triangle represents a relationship. Any two of the tips can be directly connected by a line representing a relationship between them, but not all three tips have to be connected. You can remove one of the lines, and the other line or the existence of the dots wouldn't be affected by this. Denise could sell FDSA while I still worked there. In that case, I would still have a friendship with Denise, and I would still have an independent contractor relationship with the company. Denise wouldn't have a relationship with the company anymore, but still be my friend. Or, in another scenario, Denise and I could have a falling out on a personal level that has nothing to do with dog training. In that case, we'd no longer be friends, but Denise would still own FDSA, and I would still be an independent contractor for FDSA because we are two reasonable adults who respect each other and probably wouldn't let a personal falling out impact the FDSA business. And then there's this third thing that actually happened. I stopped being an independent contractor for FDSA, so there is no longer a relationship between me and FDSA. But the friendship between me and Denise continues existing just like it did before, and Denise's ownership of FDSA also remains just like it did before. My leaving FDSA is not about Denise. My point of view seems logical to me. There's no reason why me not teaching at FDSA would have an impact on my friendship with Denise. This is completely obvious to me, and if someone told me it was different, I would be utterly confused. I would have stayed at FDSA if the location of the line in the sand was different, because I love the students, the way everyone working there is being treated, and because it is economically helpful for me as well. But the line in the sand is where it is. Its location is not about me. Its location is not personal. And because FDSA is a traditional company and not a co-op, I have no say about the line in the sand. That's not a problem for me. The last thing I'd want would be to own a slice of a company. That sounds incredibly stressful. The reason I'm saying this here is because I'm thinking of a friend who is a founding member of a successful co-op, and it is most certainly extremely stressful. I'd much rather be an independent contractor and or work for myself than ever own a slice of a multi-person operation. That's the stuff nightmares are made of. It feels like we all handled this breakup well and gracefully. I said goodbye to the other instructors and shared with them why I was leaving, and then removed myself from our private Facebook group, and I got, except for one cryptical one, only the loveliest of responses and "you will be missed." We all handled this very gracefully. I wish every breakup would work as smoothly as this one. And of course I was sad. I've been there for about a decade. But sometimes it's time to move on, and that dream job from a decade ago stops being your dream job. I cannot learn about punishment and find it effective while still being 100% kind and clear to the dog and not share this with my students. So it's a no-brainer for me that at this fork in the road, I'll pick the more precarious life over the less precarious one. So another part of the sadness is also saying goodbye to a kind of life. That's okay. I trust that I'll land on my feet, and if I don't, I have true friends near and far who'll have my back. I'm the lucky one. This is the point in this episode where I'd insert an excerpt from that Taylor Swift song if I was allowed to. Either the end or the part where you took your money and your dignity and got the hell out. So this is part 1 of my breakup duology. I've said Denise and FDSA for what feels like a fucking gazillion times in this episode. That's because 1, I wanted to tell you all my side of the story, and I wanted to let everyone know that I continue respecting the heck out of Denise and FDSA. It's also for another reason, and that's the smoothness, indeed the beauty of this breakup. This, from my point of view, was textbook. It was clear, respectful, and kind from all sides. There was open communication throughout. No one got dragged through the mud. No one got mad or jealous or felt slighted. This is the blueprint of what breakups should look like, not that anyone's asking. I want to lay this out before, in one of my next episodes, I'll tell you about a different breakup. And I want to be able to reference this episode and my 3 distinct dots analogy when I do.